Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Drew from the Money Show again, and today we got a really cool guest I'm gonna have on the show for you. And we're gonna break into a lot of the economy and the movements inside the economy that's happening. It's going to affect you in any business. I'm a massive believer in understanding the market, because the market is gonna dictate what you should be doing. It's the one that really the market is what controls what everybody, the game you should be playing, the investment you should be doing, the business you should be starting, not starting, is to me so relevant on what the market is doing. And we're gonna break into that today with what I'm gonna call a economist here with us, and sits on Bruce Norris's panels. If you ever watched out of Southern California, the I Survived Real Estate, been on it for 10 years there with Bruce, who's also an absolute genius as well. And we're gonna dive into today with Sean O'Toole. He also started a website or a business software called PropertyRadar.com. You guys can check that out. We're gonna talk about today, PropertyRadar.com. It's a great data company for a lot of you business owners and especially real estate investors. We'll dive into all this today with my good friend, Sean O'Toole. Sean, thanks for being on the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I kind of felt bad for you because I know you're gonna come out here and do some skiing and hit both at the same time, the show and skiing, and the last minute your ski got kind of canceled on you, but you still came out, man.
Yeah, you got an incredible location near Park City and Sundance, and
it's a fun one to hang out with, man. So I do appreciate you still coming out, even though the skiing got canceled. But I do think while you've been here, we've probably booked some mountain biking trips with you now, and some other stuff that we'll go have some fun with.
I hope so, yeah.
You're at a Tahoe right now.
I am.
Not born there though, right?
Not born there, been there the last 10 years. My dad was a professor and built houses at Kirkwood, another ski area, in the summers, and taught skiing in the winter. So I've been headed to the Sierras at least for most of my life, all my life.
On that note, let's back up a little bit, man. I want to give the crowd here a little bit, the viewers here, a little bit about your background, meaning your childhood. I always like to know how, I like to study entrepreneurs and figure out like what's the common denominators, if you will. And what was it like growing up, Sean O'Toole, as far as family life, brothers, sisters, etc.?
Yeah, both my parents are teachers. My dad was a professor at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, who grew up on the central coast of California, and spent my entire early life there. One sister originally. My dad did eventually remarry, and one of his students, but so I have a half sister there as well.
Very unique, man. So you grew up on the central coast of California with two parents being teachers, professor, but two parents being teachers, which you have that in common because both of my parents are teachers.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: were your parents, both in education, did they push you, your family, your brothers, sisters there, hard into getting a college degree and going down that path? So,
kind of a funny story. Like, there was definitely, right? My dad, PhD, my mom had her MBA, her master's in education, and so it was very much down that path. And my dad, the Cal Poly actually had the opportunity, the top, he was a philosophy and logic professor. And the top professor wanted to retire and come to San Luis. And that would have like totally changed like philosophy and logic department at Cal Poly. But affirmative action had just gone into place. And so they couldn't hire this guy. And my dad was apoplectic about it, right? Just just so upset. And he's like, there's not even a reason to go to school. It doesn't matter anymore. You're a white guy. You're never going to get hired, right?
Wow.
And so I still went, but my parents did buy a computer when I was 10. That's 1978.
Wow,
really
man,
early.
That is early.
And I jumped into that. And by the time I was 14, I was writing software for other people and working as a software developer.
Which is like not even heard of at that point.
Yeah, right?
The word software developer.
Yeah, Bill Gates was definitely ahead of me, but it was early, right? Really early.
And you did tell me that you built the internet.
Yeah, no, did not.
Tell me a little bit about, because I know that from there you kind of went into big tech in the .com era in the 90s. What was that transfer? How'd you get into that?
Yeah, so I actually started at my first software company, and the partners stole a bunch of money, ripped me off. It ended badly.
Welcome to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, but that's how you learn, right?
Yeah.
It's those experiences are the ones you learn the most from. And so I went back to Cal Poly, went back to school.
Okay.
And it was written 1992, right?
Okay.
So it was kind of like when the internet was first really starting to happen. And ended up running the multimedia lab for Cal Poly and doing a big video over networking trial with IBM.
Okay.
And was pretty enamored with this and found a little tiny company near San Luis that had video compression technology. And we ended up launching the first streaming video for the internet.
Wow.
With customers like Mark Cuban. So that really launched my Silicon Valley tech career.
Yeah. So you knew Mark Cuban before Mark Cuban was Mark Cuban.
Yeah, we actually we were the first to broadcast, I think, like the Grammys and over the internet.
Yeah.
And one of our competitors, Real Networks, basically, I think they paid him to not use this. I don't know that for sure, but that's what we always believe.
Yeah.
And but he showed up and wanted to put our competitors' stuff on our servers, and we almost got
in a heated battle.
In a heated battle,
which is very common for Mark Cuban, actually. I think
that's what I'm told.
That'd have been his jam. That'd have been right up his alley, man.
It's a long time ago now.
Yeah. So you did these technology companies, and going a little bit to the economy here. What I mean by economy is you studying the market, you studying the economy, because you got kind of a track record here of getting out of the .com at the right time.
Sold all my stocks in '99. Had a lot of friends and family shares and stuff. Did well.
And then you got out of the. You were kind of talking about the bubble, real estate bubble, and then in '16 you talked about the black swan
that was coming.
That could come. I want to kind of dive into. Wait a second, man. These are like some really cool, dead-on accurate, if you will, kind of predictions here. Where did this like energy concept of you just diving deep into the economy come from?
So after that first software company that I dropped out of school the first time for failed, my dad talked me into running a real estate magazine in the Hawaiian Islands, right?
Okay.
Which, I didn't know anything about, but whatever, I'm 18, go spend a couple of years in Hawaii, sure, I'll do that.
Right up your alley, right?
And, it sounds fun. Surf, windsurf, all that stuff. And so sure, I'll do it. But it was right when the crash happened in Japan.
Okay.
And that was the major buyer out in Hawaii. So here we bought what looked like a great business, and I went in 50-50 with my dad. The deal was I'd run it for the first 2 years, and then he'd run it after that, and I'd continue to get passive income,
residual,
right?
Yeah, sure.
Everybody wants passive income. So it sounded good, and but then this crash happened, and what was a really good business became a impossibly hard business, right? And it took everything I had just to keep it afloat. We had all the islands, and I broke the magazine up into separate islands and sold it off, and basically just recouped our losses. And and said, Dad, well, before doing that, I said, Dad, I'm done. It's 2 years. You're going to come run this thing. He's like, I'm seeing how hard you're working, and my professor gig's kind of good. So, but what it taught me was, that you can have a good business that ends up in real trouble because of larger economic factors, right? And I had no concept of larger economic factors before that happened. And I kind of vowed that day that I was never going to let that happen to me again. And I've been a student of the economy ever since, right? So I wouldn't call myself an economist, thank you. I appreciate that, but I've had a pretty good string so far. And and I pay a lot of attention to it because I think it's super important overall. You can get really caught on the wrong side. And also, you can have a pretty mediocre idea and do pretty brilliantly on the right side.
Well, that's a unique point right there, right? Is like with the market, you could have, and this is, I want to make sure you get credit for this because you're the one that said it, but you could have a average run-of-the-mill, even almost a bad business,
right?
But in a great market, in a great economy, actually look like a freaking business genius. Okay, not because you are, but because literally the market is making you that, and vice versa. The flip side of that, kind of what you went through, you could actually have a good, solid business model, idea, concept, plan running, and outside factors like the market brings you down and cripples you.
Yeah.
And it goes on both sides of that. So that's why and we talked about it. I crashed in the market in '07.
You weren't alone.
And I looking back on it with your definition there, I would say that I was the not a bad business idea, but I was the bad business owner maybe. I was flipping houses, right, and crushing it, but I got caught in this idea of like, I must be a genius. Welcome world, I have arrived, I'm 22, and look at me flip houses. And not understanding that, honestly, dude, I was selling you could have sold I always say you could sell a bad house on a bad street in a bad town during that time frame and still get multiple offers. So it wasn't like I was some great business person. I was just let's just say the average product, but in a great market.
Yeah.
And when that changed, I realized I wasn't a good business understanding what was really happening there. And it has forever changed my entire outlook in business practices, understanding kind of what you were talking about there.
We all learn through failure, right?
Yeah.
You don't learn through your success, you learn through your failures.
For sure. And in your looking at the market, what level would you put the importance of understanding the market inside of your business or any business out there, right? These business owners, investors watching, where on the scale 1 to 10, where would you put that understanding the market at for them?
It does vary a little bit by business, right? And a little bit by your approach, right? How aggressive, how speculative you're being or not. And I think that there's some businesses that can kind of just crank along and do fine. But yeah, if your business depends at all, like on these larger market swings, I put it a 9 or a 10, right? It
Way
should
up to
be,
them.
yeah, it should be one of the top things you're thinking about. Where are we on the trend cycle right now? And what's likely to happen next? What happens when something like a global pandemic comes? It was a black swan, and another gal wrote a book about the gray somethings. But anyways, it's like we all knew a pandemic was coming, right? Or the scientific community certainly knew a pandemic was coming. It's just a matter of time of when it was going to happen, right? And it's just one of cyber security issues, terrorism, like 9/11 is a terrible event, but not these unexpected events happen, right?
Right, in the economy, sure.
And so you should have an understanding of what that means for you. What position are you in? Do you have the cash to make it through if you're highly leveraged, right? Because you can lose everything.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these bigger picture market trends, understanding what's possible and planning for that, I think is, prudent part of any business.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think it dictates so much of your business and how it operates, works, what you should be looking ahead to. And I know after that crash, living through the failure, I'm always looking ahead of like, where's the trap at? Where's the risk at in what I'm doing right now? And man, so many times when I feel like, man, I am absolutely crushing it right now. Like every red flashing light in my brain will go off at that moment. And I'll have these thoughts like driving the road. I'm like, my God, this is like, I can't believe all this stuff is happening. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like, Drew, you're not that good of a business person. And it makes me have that thought of like, okay, I need to pay attention right here. There's maybe something that I'm missing right now that I need to pay attention to. I want to go a little bit deeper with you. You did the .com era and you studied the market after the Japan crash. You studied the market then, got out at the right time. You did it again in the bubble. You did it again in 2016 as far as talking about, hey, there's a black swan coming.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of background of like, how did you, and if you will, for, I'll say me, maybe not the viewers, give me the kindergarten version, where I can understand it. Like, what were some of the things that you were kind of looking at or watching there?
So, each one's a little different, right?
Okay.
So why don't we hone in on what scared me at the end of 2005, right? Okay. Because the housing bubble is one
and you're
everybody
an investor.
feels. I was an investor. I was flipping quite a few deals, probably 50 a year or something. So not big these days, but back then that was a decent number. And I saw a few signs. So the first thing I saw, real estate. So I'm looking at the data, right? And you're seeing days on market increase a little bit, right? Sale prices starting to flatten. Number of sales, right? So the flow of deals is starting to slow. Prices aren't coming down at all, right? One of the things I love about real estate is it doesn't change quickly, right? So there was signs at
Not
the
like
end of
GameStop right now.
2005. Yeah, geez, not like GameStop, right? Like
Yeah.
stuff changes so quickly there. At the end of 2005, there were clear signs to me there was a problem in the market, right?
Okay.
Ben Bernanke in middle of 2007 is still saying, hey, this is just a subprime crisis. It's no big deal. It's largely contained, right? Completely wrong. Like
Just
a year and a half later,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, you know, the real estate market doesn't move that quickly.
Right.
And if you're paying attention, you get lots of signs. And I don't, you know, lots of people didn't see those signs, you know, but real estate data is tough, right? It's hard to see. It's 45 days after the fact, et cetera. But I was paying attention. I was seeing these things stretch out. Then I saw a couple other things that were a little more anecdotal. I was in markets like the Central Valley of California. So I'm selling a $450,000 house in Stockton. And I usually use brokers to sell my stuff. I'm a broker, but I usually use somebody else, use their insurance, whatever. But for whatever reason, I ended up meeting this young couple.
Okay.
And really nice, cute couple. But she's a maid, right?
Okay.
He's a field worker,
Okay.
right? And they're buying a $450,000 house, right? And I'm like, how
Wait
much
a
do you guys
second.
make, you know? And I just having a conversation with them, and, you know, he kind of hoped to be like, move up out of, you know, that and be in real estate or something someday. And so we're just talking, and I'm like, guys, don't buy this house, right? Like, don't buy this house. Like, they had qualified on the pay option arm payment.
Oh yeah.
Now, I bought a house when I was 18 years old, right? This is my first software company, I was killing it, and I bought a house when I was 18, and I had a pay option arm loan, but they qualified me on the 30-year payment,
Okay.
right? And that's the way those worked for years, and they were a great product, and they were designed to prevent foreclosure, right? Because if I qualified up here, and if something happened, I had a job loss, I could make this lower payment.
Wow.
What they did in 2008 is they started qualifying everybody based on this payment, which was only temporary.
Right,
It
right.
doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
You know, the banks and everybody else in this belief that real estate only goes up. And I'm like, you know, you guys aren't going to be able to do this. This doesn't work. And that really bothered me, like, to my core. Like, this market doesn't work if this is who's buying houses. And so I started calling other realtor friends. It's like, who are you selling homes to? What's the financing look like? And it was mostly this.
Yeah.
And I went, no, I'm out. I don't want to own anything. And then the third data point was, you know, knowing your market's important. And I would go to the new home sales offices
Okay.
and chat up the new home sales folks. What's your traffic? Are you pre-selling everything? Are you sold out? You know, what's going on? And right around this same time, I went to the new home sales office, and like, it totally changed. Like, we can't sell everything. He's like, my developer just offered to let me offer a free swimming pool,
Wow.
right, if you buy this house. And I'm like, the guy next door just bought the house with 0% down and had bad credit, right? Because that's
Yeah.
where we got. And I'm like, when he finds out the guy next door got a free swimming pool, he's not going to make his payments.
Yeah.
And those three things were what signaled me that time.
So your
And it was
telltale
kind of
signs.
similar, kind of real kind of feet on the ground, paying attention, thinking about, you know, where this is, what were prices like versus cap rates, return on investment, right? So if you had to rent this property out, what kind of return would it get? Is that sustainable or not? Is it sustainable versus interest rates? I mean, in 2008, you were better off putting your money in a T-bill.
Yeah.
Right? The return was better to put it in Treasury. Treasury has a lot less risk than housing. Like, it just didn't make any sense.
You know, I remember I was this has been early 2000s, 2004, 5-ish era, something like that. And I was brand new to real estate, had never done a deal yet, and I was working got out of college, moved to California, just for a brief moment in time, and was down in the Santa Clara, San Jose, Silicon Valley area. And real estate was just booming beyond measure. And I was working for this real estate agent, just trying to, and again, I went there from the standpoint of learning not how to be an agent, but just wanted to know more about real estate and the transactions of it. And he was doing this, and I saw it happen, and I think this is a mistake that I know it's a mistake that I made, and I'm wondering if you see other people making the same mistake, where you see people see it and then justify that it won't happen.
Yeah.
And this was me, man. I was working in his office, and he had this idea where he was an agent, but what he did was he would go market and get people basically from his local circle of friends, right? church community, et cetera, and bring them over. They knew nothing about real estate. They didn't know about a market, the economy, money. They were just, a typical, but they lived in California for 20 years, right? Whatever it was.
Yeah.
House had 400 grand of equity in it. Everybody was paper rich, in those booms. And he would convince them to refinance their house in a option arm, pull equity out, like 300 or 200 grand or something, and then go buy another one.
Yep.
And that one was an option arm. And then we would rent it out for them, but the rent didn't cover the option arm payment.
Oh.
And we had to pull out so much equity to set it aside to be able to make the payments, just not if they didn't make the payments, but just the extras every month. And then it was this math that was like, okay, so appreciation is going to do this, therefore in 5 years it'd actually be worth 1.3. You're going to sell all of it, and it was just like wizardry, right?
Yeah.
And dude, people were doing it like it was just all of friends, family, connections. And I went to his office finally, and I'm like, dude, this ain't going to work.
Yeah.
Like. It's not always gonna, and I was brand new to real estate. I'm like, there's no way this is gonna work. Like the idea that real estate is always gonna go up, even in your market, right? Is like, well, that means that real estate would be like $1 billion, $9 million for a house right now, and it's mathematically impossible. And I remember I eventually quit that job. I'm like, I cannot do this, man.
Can't do it.
I cannot do this. Like I'm bringing all these people in here, and I was like, I'm conscious I couldn't do it. However, I then went to.
I think you just hit on a great idea though. Like we need to start like a justification index,
Yes.
like track justifications.
Yes.
And like when more and more of that is happening, like that's a clear sign.
Clear sign something's
going to go the other way.
And the mistake that I made was I justified it by when I left there saying, yeah, but that's just California.
Right.
And then I went to Atlanta, right? Houses are 150, 200 grand, and completely ignored everything that I just witnessed.
Just learned.
And said, oh, well, we could go do it. And then, it was still going for several years.
Right.
And made it great money, and then boom, bottom fell out of it. Do you see a lot of that justification happening when you're out there with people? I know you're very well connected in California and with investors and so forth.
Nobody wants a good thing to end,
Yeah.
right? Like you're going to come
True.
up, your mind is
True.
going to naturally look for why it's not going to end and try to convince yourself that it's not going to end because it's depressing to think that it's going to end.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody
it's your
wants
livelihood,
to.
It's
yeah.
everything that you have going is at that time.
Everything inside of us is set up to build us to justify that it's going to not
That's a
end.
good point. Yeah, no one wants it to end. And I think that's why we justify it so much. Like you even watch, I love some of those documentaries that were created after the fact, and you watch them, and I'll even give the example of a movie. Maybe people watch The Big Short and stuff.
Yeah.
And you watch it, and you remember that guy at the movie was Christian Bale, I think, played the actor. And all these super sophisticated literal economists, kind of the same thing. I just think they didn't want it to almost end, and ignored him and said he was, crazy and all this different stuff. And it had to be some of that justification going on there.
It's really interesting because so at the end of 2005, I saw this going on, but I was already tracking every foreclosure in California.
Right.
Right.
Which
Every
is your
single
jam of
one.
Property radar, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's how I started the company. And so I had all this data, I'm tracking all this, and I have this unique data set, and I start seeing it like really start to escalate in 2006.
Okay.
And I had a couple buddies who were, I think one was the top broker at Merrill Lynch at the time, like #1 in the nation.
Wow.
And I called him and I said, dude, like, I got to show you this data. Like, I think we should short like New Century and like Countrywide and all these companies. And he's down in Newport Beach area, Orange County, which was where all these companies were based. Like he played golf with a lot of these guys, right? And I'm like, dude, like, hear me out, see what you think. Like, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna take what money I have and like bet against these guys. So totally a big short, right?
Yeah.
Probably on a smaller scale than the guy in the movie, but it was like that was my thesis for the first half of 2006 as I was getting rid of my inventory. And it probably would have been a little early at that point. Like I might have gotten squeezed and might not have made it. But he went and talked to those guys and came back and said, Sean, this will be the biggest mistake you ever make to short these guys. They know what's happening. They see it. They've hedged it all out. Like they've been planning for this from the beginning. Like they know that a correction's going to come. And none of those companies exist today, right?
Yeah.
Like they've gone.
It was
And
like a popcorn going off, man.
yeah, it would definitely been retire for life and then some money if I'd taken my cash at the time.
It's so unique because on that point there, like when I was in Atlanta doing these deals, I had the chief security officer for City Financial. Now, I'm not talking for the nation worldwide, but like for that
area, division,
or whatever
region,
it is they had, right? He was our chief security officer, and we're like Ernst & Young, and they would try to hack in and all this stuff. Brilliant guy, very wealthy. And I just met him through a connection, and he was one of my biggest investors. He wanted to get this capital in play. He owned a bunch of properties in Florida, and he's like, yeah. So we were doing these deals on these fix and flips, and I went to him and said, hey man, I'm just wondering, with all these houses, like should we start making some adjustments here? You just have that like hunch when you're on the streets and you're on the market and you're doing the deals. You're like, dude, this isn't just
doesn't
adding
feel
up right now.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was, but I just had that like thing, and I had a ton of buddies still in California, and they were talking to me. I'm like, so I brought him out to the houses, and then I take him around. We go to lunch, and I ask him. He's like, oh no, dude. He's like, the California, don't worry about it. He's like, you're in this middle income price of $200,000 to $300,000. He's like, dude, don't even worry about it. These is gonna be fine. And we'd like triple down. And dude, it wasn't a year and a half later, and you couldn't give the houses away in Atlanta, Georgia, man. With all the mortgage fraud that also happened there and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's funny because you hear these, like in that example that you gave there of the actual mortgage banks justifying it. Here's the wealthiest guy that I knew at the time justifying it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's this like you don't want it to end.
And there's a whole bit there of like, you're not smart enough about these markets. You don't understand what's going on. And I'm like, it's pretty obvious, right?
No,
like
but they position you or guys who are saying this as like the guy with a tinfoil hat that sits in the basement all day long.
Yeah, right.
That's literally how they position you. Oh, 'cause you're the conspiracy theory weirdo, basically.
Yeah.
Therefore, this can't be right. And it's like, I don't know, dude. The data is saying that this is dead on accurate. It's so crazy. So tell me, last one, talking about the black swan. What was the angle there?
So so I did a lot of speaking through the foreclosure crisis, talked a lot about, what was going on, what I thought was going to happen. And despite the fact that I ran a company that sold foreclosure data, I saw regulatory changes, and I said, guys, this party's going to end.
Okay.
Right?
What year was this when you started doing that?
It was probably 2010.
Okay.
I said, this is the beginning. 2009, actually, I think I wrote my first article basically saying, hey, there aren't all these bank-owned homes, the shadow inventory. There's a lot of talk about shadow inventory.
Oh, man.
We went out and address by address proved that there was no shadow inventory.
Wow.
So we literally found out what happened to every single
years.
property. Yeah, and we just totally disproved shadow inventory completely. So that was a big talking point. We only had data on the West Coast, so I couldn't prove it nationally, but there was none on the West Coast. None that mattered, right?
Right,
I mean, there was a few, but nothing that mattered. And so totally lost where I was going there.
Oh, we're talking about how you kind of predict the black swan.
Oh, the black swan. So I went from talking about all that stuff, right? And I kept staying on the speaking circuit, right? And everybody's like, oh, what's going to happen next? And in 2016, I'm like, guys, nothing's going to happen next, right? Like, we're in a good, long market, right?
Okay.
And it's going to continue going until there's a black swan. And and I'm done speaking because I got nothing else to tell you. Like, this is what it looks like, and this is what it's going to continue to look like, right?
Okay.
For the foreseeable future until we have the next whatever it is. And I had this slide that said, here's the possible black swans. And one of the things on the slide was pandemic, but it wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
And all those other ones are still out there, like cybersecurity attacks and, climate, disasters,
the grid attacks.
And I mean, there's just automation, right? Like the internet was a black swan, right? So think about what internet did to so many, it destroyed
jobs,
so many businesses. So huge value creation on this side, but it destroyed a lot of folks on this side, right?
Sure.
So the internet's a black swan too, right? So I listed out like what I saw as kind of like the top most obvious black swans. Like one of these is going to happen. It's not if, it's just when.
Because what you're saying by that, they always kind of are happening, floating. If you just watch the entire market, they're always at periodically times are hitting.
Little ones, right? And then we get big ones, like a global pandemic.
This isn't new, basically, the black swan concept.
Right.
It was like it started in 2019.
9/11, throughout history, right? This is and Nassim Taleb wrote kind of the book on that, and Michelle wrote a second book basically saying, well, black swans are unpredictable. We've got a problem now with ones that are predictable.
Yeah.
Like, a pandemic was predictable. It was going to happen. We should have been ready for it, right? So whatever. That was my slide. And then I said, okay, but more importantly, here's what happens. And I'll share the slide deck with you. And it says the first thing that happens is Janet Yellen's going to come out with a shrink ray. And I used like a scene from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, right?
Yeah.
But Janet Yellen's sitting behind it, and it takes a black swan and shrinks it down to a little baby cygnet, which is what a black swan's baby swan's called. And I said, so they're going to throw what they learned in 2008 is that after the next one, they're going to throw a lot more at this, right? And so something like a global pandemic is incredibly deflationary, right? And you have to fill that. If you want your economy to keep going, you got to fill that gap. And so you put out, stimulus, right, which is without a deflationary problem is incredibly inflationary. But the two, if you do it in the right balance, cancel each other out, right? So that's the goal. And sure enough, we did, right? Bigger across the board response than the world has ever seen, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just us. Like, I think it would have been, I don't know if we'd still be the world's reserve currency today if this had been a US event.
Sure.
But it was a global event, which was, I think, very lucky for us. And so central banks around the world all did that. They all threw money at this problem, and we're not done throwing money at this problem. So that was kind of, the big thing is like, go out there, keep doing your deals. Know that this is probably going to happen. Don't get so over leveraged that if people can't pay you rent, you can't continue to make the payment, right? Keep something in reserves. Have enough cash flows coming in to cover however aggressive you want to be.
Because it is going to happen, so be prepared for it.
Because it's going to happen, right? And so that was kind of the speech that I gave in 2016. I also talked a lot about automation. I don't think people think enough about how much automation is going to change kind of the economy and society and the rest in the years to come, right? We, right now, most of our self-worth comes from work.
Sure.
And we are going to enter a period of time here where we don't need as many people to work, right? So why there's so much money in tech is we put people out of work. Right? I mean, at the end of the day, we make things more efficient. In 1960, when payroll software kind of was the first software to start automating stuff, right? That is when you see the line break. Like, so if you look at US productivity, it keeps going up. It's like it keeps going up and keeps going up. But in 1960, late 60s, the line breaks and wages went up perfectly with productivity before that. It breaks and wages go flat. Inflation adjusted, right? That's all about automation. That's why I can have an iPhone in my pocket that is more computing power than the entire United States had in the 1960s, right? And that trend is going to continue, and it means fewer people need to work. And that means that has all kinds of implications, has implications on real estate and housing. So that was my last talk in 2016 until the pandemic, and now I'm back out.
Speaking
chatting.
again.
Yeah.
And so just current time right now, 2020, COVID hits.
COVID hits.
Right? The pandemic of COVID hits. As we sit here right now, we're in 2021 time frame right now. It's still going on, COVID. I want to go back to, you made a comment earlier, you said back in last real estate crash, is when, and it might have been the first time it happened, but you started seeing the government throwing money, stimulus, right? They had the TARP back then, and they were throwing money at this thing, trying to keep it moving, drop interest rates to zero, right? The feds, and they're throwing everything at it, or they didn't throw everything at it, but they threw a lot at it, and it was like, wow, that's I remember thinking back then, that's a lot.
Greenspan, Bernanke, a bunch of others, did, I forget who did the big paper, but basically that we should have thrown money at the Great Depression and we wouldn't have had a Great Depression, right? And so that is the current belief system, right? And, when you look back at the dot-com bubble, right, the conclusion basically was we didn't throw enough at it, right? And we didn't throw it early enough. And, and then the Fed kind of did, right? Like the Fed basically said, hey, they directed money towards mortgages, right? The Fed created that housing bubble, right? Because they said, yeah, qualify them on the pay option arm. We don't care. We think this is a good place for money to go. And there's more to that because we ran a surplus in the late 90s. And we export dollars because we import more than we export. So we export dollars. Those dollars have to, they can't use those dollars. So they put those dollars back in our debt, right? Well, we didn't need to sell treasuries because we ran a surplus. So you got to tell these folks, what do you do with your dollars that we're exporting to you?
Interesting.
And Greenspan said, put them into Fannie and Freddie, right?
That's where he had them pump the money into, basically.
That's where they had them pump, because these dollars have to stay. People don't, everybody complains about the trade deficit, right?
Okay.
What we get with the trade deficit is cheap junk from China. But TVs are cheap, microphones are cheap, most of the stuff I see around me is cheap and from China, right? And we get very low interest rates because we send them dollars and they take those dollars back and put them in our debt.
Interesting. In 08, we threw money at it.
Yep.
.com, we threw a little bit. 08, we threw more.
But very little compared to what we threw this time.
And that's why I was going with it. This time, it's just like, my God, like the gloves are off. And we passed the hundreds of millions, and then we didn't even acknowledge that.
Trillions.
And then it was the billions. I mean, that was like nothing. And now we're in the trillions and multiple times. Like it's like I'm sitting back thinking, holy crap, dude! This is a lot. When you stop and think about right now, we're in the process of Joe Biden's trying to pass a $1.9 trillion stimulus.
Yeah.
When you think about $1.9 trillion, it's mind blowing. Like what that number is.
So what's really interesting there, right, is our economy is not very well, like if you run a marketing business, like you're going to measure it, right, and really understand. We don't really have a very good measure of the economy, especially when it comes to small business. We don't know how many small businesses were opened yesterday, how many were closed, what's happening with their revenue. We have no measurement of most of our economy. And so I think, so we know that the pandemic is very deflationary, right?
Okay.
It has huge economic hits, people sitting at home, lots of businesses out of business, restaurants can't serve, movie theaters closed, whatever, huge, right? What do we need in terms of stimulus to offset that, to keep the economy okay? Right? To not go into a major recession, not have knock-on effects that wouldn't be necessary outside of this pandemic. And we don't know, right? So it's very possible that $1.9 trillion is too much, right?
Sure.
And in which case it becomes a little inflationary, right? That money will seek out seek out deals, try to go to work. It'll maybe boost, who knows? It'll seep out in weird places like exotic car prices, and it bubbles, right? And so it's also possible it's nowhere near enough.
Right.
We don't know.
We just don't have that gauge to tell us, right? Really.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy in this day and age. We don't know. We have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, we're printing money, right? The world's printing money. We can get away with it right now. It's probably better off to be safe than sorry. But yeah, it's a crazy bet. And where does it end?
Yeah. Where does it stop at? Where does it? But the other part of my brain is like, yeah, it's 1.9 trillion, but we're almost 30 trillion in debt. So. And
which also, my dad's like, was always like, we can't continue running these deficits, right? That was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We can't continue, like your parents probably said the same thing. These deficits are crazy. We can't continue to do this, right? And yet they've just nothing but gone up and up, and under both parties, right?
Exactly.
Neither party can complain to be fiscally conservative, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's an ongoing trend, what does that mean? The biggest takeaway that I think is important for people in real estate is that debt continues to go up, interest rates can only go down.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
You think about doubling of interest rates and how much faster our debt goes up because we've got to pay the interest on that debt, right? And a lot of that debt's held by the U.S. government in short-term, treasuries and things like that have to be refinanced. So if interest rates start going up, our cost of servicing that debt goes up.
Right.
Right? So I think the one big picture trend you can count on until we really blow things up, like maybe we're no longer the world's reserve currency or something goes really, really bad, is more debt and lower interest rates.
It's kind of what the future is headed towards.
Yeah.
It has to go that way until there's what you're saying, it has to go that way until there's some sort of explosion, if you will, of the economy, the dollar, the US dollar, until some massive thing happens into it.
Yeah, and that's so bad, at that point, I don't know. I like owning free and clear real estate because in that case, if they have to pay me in chickens, I'm going to get something, right? Like population's continuing to grow. That's one of the reasons I like real estate, right? People still need a place to live and population continues to grow and we've made it illegal to build, so we're undersupplying the market. And so I feel pretty good about that.
And I want to now circle back, full picture here.
Yeah.
We talk about these predictions and how you watch the market, you watch the economy, you watch what's happening in sales. And one reason you kind of have maybe an inside track on a lot of it is because of your company that you started, Property Radar, which is providing an insane amount of data that you're able to watch, gauge, track. And you didn't, I don't know, maybe you did, but you didn't really build that for tracking economy data. It's not the angle you were playing with it, but it does provide you a lot of inside track to it.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly gave me a lot of insight, when I decided to exit the market in 2005. So because, after the dot-com crash, I moved out to my vacation house and started hanging out with a friend who was a commercial developer. Mm-hmm. And, I was thinking maybe I'd do that. I'd always been a startup software guy other than that little brief real estate magazine. So maybe I go do that. And, but he introduced me to a guy flipping foreclosures. And he's like, you got to go write software for this guy. He's still keeping track of his business on the back of Polaroids. Yeah. He literally had a shoebox with each day of the month and Polaroids that he just, like if the sale postponed, he'd move it to that day in the shoebox, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you got to go write software for this guy. He's killing it. And I go, and he's got really nice offices and antiques everywhere. And I'm asking him questions like, what's your return on capital, right? Are you able to keep your capital fully deployed or is it sitting in the bank doing nothing most of the time? Like all the questions that, kind of I was trained on, in Silicon Valley, you're very metrics driven, right? And everything's around the metrics. And he didn't know. But he said, hey, here's my deals from last year. I'd be really curious. You're not doing anything. Why don't you take them home and analyze them?
Yeah.
Here's what his return on capital was, including the time the money was sitting in the banks.
No clue.
80%.
Wow.
80% return on capital. And I went, holy moly, okay. I made enough money in Silicon Valley that unless I perfectly hit, back then it would have been a Yahoo, right? Because Google was starting, but it was going, but it wasn't yet a big financial win, right? Unless I perfectly hit one of these companies in Silicon Valley, right? I'm not going to make as much money as the small wins, taking that capital and making an 80% return. And so whereas I had no interest in developing software for the 40 guys who are flipping foreclosures in California, I was pretty interested in an 80% return on my money. And so that got me into the foreclosure business. But being a data guy, being a data scientist, being a Silicon Valley guy, the first thing I did was go look for data.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a shit show.
It is, it was.
The data's bad.
Yeah.
The data quality's bad, the providers are bad, the formats are bad, the timeliness is bad, everything's bad. And so, I need data. And I probably didn't actually need data. I probably should have just been knocking on doors. I probably would have done more deals, right?
Sure. And I think that's why it's never actually been, people do it. Because they go through okay, I could go create this, but I tell you what, if I just go knock doors, I'm going to find another deal and make some more money right now.
And it's so hard, right? And if you've got the skills, but I had the data skills. I didn't have the door knocking skills. I'm terrible at that, right? So I was trusty sale buyer. I just show up and throw in my bid.
Sure.
It's all data analysis. It's not all the rest. And so you know, and then at that point, I got exposed to the world of public records, title history, you know, chain of title, and all of that. And I found that where I found anomalies in title were the deals that I made the most money on, right? Big money sometimes, right? And everybody else down at the steps is like, they called their person at the title company, said, no, that's the title on this is a mess. I wouldn't touch that.
Yeah.
But I'd figure it out, and I'd make a couple $100,000.
Right.
Right? Nobody else would touch it, and I'd buy it for nothing.
Yep.
So I became pretty enamored with public records data and went deep, right? Went down the rabbit hole, for sure. And so when I decided to get out of the market at the end of 2005, I still had all this data. I had expanded to covering all of California. And then I started seeing the foreclosures go up, tried to do the shorts, the big short, got talked out of it, and said, you know what, I got to make this data available. It's going to be important through this crisis that I think's coming, and really was thinking originally that I'd be selling it to realtors, right? Because everything was underwater, right? So there was nothing to buy at the trustee sales. You know, even in the first half of 2008, you couldn't buy anything. It was like it's going to sale for 400,000. It's worth 200 now, right?
Sure.
Like you couldn't buy anything, and then the banks started dropping bids. And we were tracking all of that, so we had all the drop bids, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is the greatest opportunity ever. And a couple months later, I was on 60 Minutes explaining it to Steve Croft, which was pretty amazing. Blew me up, blew the company up, and you know, and the rest is history. Yeah.
So this is 60 Minutes is now your second greatest interview you've ever been on.
Second, yes,
yeah,
for sure.
I mean, for
this
sure.
is number one.
Yeah, it has to be. But no, dude, I love the day that you have there. And my brain is just running right now of like ideas of who it affects and who can use it. And you talk about real estate agents, mortgage brokers, business owners. It's not just data built for real estate investors.
Yeah, so I believe public records, right? If you sell to home or commercial property owners, public records is the greatest resource ever, because unlike every other business where you've got to go put up billboards and do other things to find people and have them magically call you, public records, you can know every potential customer by name. Like their data's there, right? When they bought the house, how long they've lived there, and you can match that up with how old they are and their phone and their email and like how often they refinance and what their last loan looked like. I mean, it's just an incredible treasure trove of data for small business. Yeah. And so we've had a lot of realtors over the years use us to kind of step up the game from the farm that you'll get from a title company, like, or the every door direct mail. Like, hey, if you market to this specific area and you market to every house, okay, that's better than nothing, right? But if you just take that one step further, right? Some people have lived there a long time. Some people have lived there a short time. Some people have equity. Some people have none, right? Some people are old. Some people are young. Should your message be the same to all those groups?
Yeah,
right?
No way.
Right? And so by pulling all these data points together and making them accessible, now it becomes really easy to say, oh, a law just changed in California where if you're over 55, you can move your tax basis, right? I'm going to target everybody in my farm that already knows me with that information, and I'm going to be the first, right? And there's going to be a handful of people who go, hey, this is awesome. I was thinking about moving. Can you tell me more?
Yep.
Right? So
because that messaging is different now.
Right.
To the exact data that you're looking at.
And then real estate investors have been our core,
Sure.
right? Like our customers have bought, I mean, I think probably $30-40 billion at the trustee sales and another $20-30-40 billion directly from homeowners. So I don't think any platform's been used to buy more real estate in the world.
Yeah.
And we're only in 5 states. And you know, the reason for that is, right, is I started in California because there's only 50 counties in California. You go to Texas, there's 250. You go farther east, there's even more, like little tiny towns or counties. And you gotta go get data from each one of these.
Right.
So I had 5% of the data costs and 30% of the market opportunity.
Sure.
Right? So just being smart about markets and how to start your business. And so kind of grew it and tested it all there and got it right. But real estate investors, again, targeted marketing, or just driving down the street, as you're driving down the street, will show you, oh, that house is underwater, or that house is in foreclosure as you're driving, and you're like, oh, that one's boarded up. Click, there's their phone number, call, you're talking to them, writing it down, looking it up at the title company, and the rest. So
I think a great point you made there earlier was you talked about you kind of became this expert at public records title, confusing titles on houses, and there's very, very good money in those a lot of times because I think for the most part, real estate investors look for the low-hanging fruit.
Easy deals.
I don't blame them. I'm not saying it's wrong, but they look for the low-hanging fruit. And I have a buddy of mine. He's an attorney out in San Antonio, Texas. He was here just a couple weeks ago at an event we were doing. And man, this guy just murders real estate. Just absolutely destroys it. Like I've never seen anything like it. But he literally only goes after like the most weirdest, randomest, horrible structured deals that are on title. And then he'll bring me these HUDs where he's like, oh yeah, I bought this for $4,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
What?
And it's worth like X, whatever. It's like, what are you talking about? And it's because he was just willing to put the time in.
Right.
And go and understand how the titles works and all this different stuff and break it down. Where most people, like you said, call the title company and like, hey, what's up? And they're like, oh, it's too complicated.
Right.
And they're not telling you a lie. It is super complicated, and they don't want to do it. But man, I think you're the only other person I know that goes like that I personally know that goes after these like horrible random deals. But like you said, they have the crazy equity in them.
Yeah. And I did plenty of the regular vanilla things, and that kind of funded it. But all the real money came for the ones that nobody else was willing to do.
Yeah.
Right. And where it took a little bit of extra work. And I think that's just, as an entrepreneur, right? Like that's where all the great success comes from, is when you're willing to do a little more work. Do that little extra effort that the next guy that's trying to do the same thing isn't.
Again, this is Property Radar. Website's propertyradar.com.
Yep.
If they want to go check it out, go look at it. It's actually extremely, what I would say, extremely cheap in cost for what you're freaking getting out of it.
I'm very focused on small business, right?
Yeah.
I could make a lot more money going and selling this to large business, and we have some slightly larger, but my personal mission is helping the little guy.
Yeah.
The letters that I keep are the guy who lost almost everything in 2008 and then built it back beyond their wildest dreams and is now retired and has taken the time to send me a thank you letter. Yeah. And that's what I live for. And I think small business is getting slaughtered by big business, and I think they need the help. Yeah, for sure. So again, it's propertyradar.com. If you want to know more about how that works, where they can get more information there. I want to ask you a couple questions here as we kind of wrap up. Yeah. Number one, if you were just to give maybe some pointers, some tips here, is there anything, maybe one or two things that are hyper-focused that maybe an investor should follow on a daily, weekly basis of what they should kind of look for? Is it DOM, days on market? Is there anything they should just really like, hey, make sure no matter what you do, just watch this for sure though? Yeah, I think velocity, right? Velocity of money, velocity, so important. Just deals, right? And, one of the things that was really common, one of the justifications that was really common in 2008 was, well, sales are slowing down because there's no inventory. Yeah. Right? And that's a pretty logical conclusion to come to, but that wasn't the underlying problem there. And, prices are high. I think this market still, because of interest rates, because of some things with the pandemic and the rest, I think we're going to see still some winners. I think we may start to see some losers this year. I think this may be a market of mixed reactions. So I think really paying attention locally to what's going on. We had a lot of people removed to my resort community, Tahoe, right, from the Bay Area because they're trying to escape the pandemic and wanted to go walk in the trees and actually have a life. But if we have a big storm this winter and the rest, and how many of them go, oh, this was a bad idea, I don't want to live here, I like our old school, our kids miss their 75 friends, degrees. Right, it's 75 degrees, I'm moving back. I think, and it's possible, I think our population's probably going to increase 50 to 100% in 1 year. Wow. Of full-time people. And it's, I think overall it's still bullish for the community, but it's possible that a lot of those folks decide. So I think there's a lot to watch this year, and you want to really keep your ear to the ground. I agree with you, man. I think 2021 will be a very interesting year. I'm still, when it comes on the investing side, I would tell you that I'm probably more on the sidelines right now. Yeah.
Just because I look at 2020 and think, I don't know, man, that was just a weird thing. A lot of money tossed around, a lot of loans, PPPs, and the EDUs. I mean, it was literally put your name and address on this SBA loan. Yeah. And you get $100,000, you get $100,000, you get $100,000, and no payments on them.
And go look at the alphabet soup of programs the Fed had. Like, people don't even understand how much trillions of dollars went out the door there.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just feel like, man, I just wonder, like, just from a personal standpoint, just like all that money being thrown around and how easy it was to get a hold of, and never happened like that. And then you had this federal unemployment hitting of $600 a week and so forth. And I don't know, man, I just felt like, I look at 2020 and think, I know it was booming, and I know I hear all my real estate buddies talking, man, it's best market we've ever had, and I'm not disagreeing with them. I don't know, I just look for my personal money and think, I don't know, dude. I'm a little skeptical on it, and 2021 to me could be a very interesting year to see what happens.
I would not be speculating right now. I'm not speculating on GameStop,
Yeah.
But I do think there's a difference between speculating and investing, right?
Oh, for sure.
So if you think about the longer term trends, right, I think automation continues to be important, right? I think, places like Salt Lake and Austin and others that are attracting that talent that work on that. I think that's good. If you think about cap rates, and if you can buy a property with a good return on investment in a world where interest rates have to go down,
sure,
right? That's going to be a good long-term investment, so long as you're in a position to hold it through any turbulence, right? So I don't think you have to stop. I don't think you have to go completely to the sidelines, but it might be nice to have some cash available for opportunities too. Yeah.
Here's what I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that, I don't know, maybe I'm holding out too long. But I think because I got burnt last time, maybe still.
Oh yeah, totally.
I'm like, man, I'm gonna keep waiting, and I'm just gonna wait till this thing goes out, and then I got capital to deploy.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a little bit of a wrong play there, but it's kind of what's in my head, like just watching it, and I thought the wave is, like you said, the top. But I do agree with you, man. With debt going up, interest rates have to go down to sustain that process. And if you're borrowing money at 30 years at freaking 2.5% on some of these houses, that's like some of the craziest interest rates you can think of on a 30-year fix. As long as I love what you're saying, as long as that cash flow is covering it with extra, your cap rates are good, and you have some extra money to fight the turbulence if it does happen, it's probably still a good investment style. I mean, how are you going to beat that thing?
And the other thing is where are you, right? So it's the whole time and money. Like when you're young, you have all kinds of time and no money, right?
Right.
And then as you move forward, you have more money than time. And you have to be careful there. You get caught up in these belief systems, especially those of us that have been pretty successful flipping houses, right? Because you're like, shit, I was buying stuff at a 10 cap, right? Why would I ever buy something at a 5 cap?
Yeah.
However, that thing at a 10 cap takes a lot of time, right? And as you start to accumulate wealth and you're doing better, right, your mindset changes.
It does.
And if you buy a 5 cap and hold it for 20 years, you've killed it.
Yeah.
A 5 cap today, hold it for 20 years. No matter what happens, you've killed it.
It's so funny, man. We in our power room that we have, just high net worth individuals, and we had I hold an event, and there was a bunch of guests in there, and one of our members on our founding members team runs a massive fund that invests constantly, and I mean it's about a $500 million fund, and they're in all kinds of developments and so forth, and getting money out. And he was talking about a deal that he did. Long-term play that was capped out like at a 4.5% to 5% cap. And I mean, this guy,
we thought it was a terrible investment.
This guy was so happy. He's like, "Oh, this is one of my favorite deals."
Yeah.
And in a room, they're like, "What are you talking about?
That's terrible
5%
return."
Cap rate, and it was just watching the difference between the two. But a lot of those guys, a lot of them were just different in where they're at in life and what they were trying to accomplish. But I mean, this fund was totally stoked.
But here's the thing is once you start thinking longer term, right? What basically a lower cap rate means is higher quality, right? And so that lower cap rate means less income today, but higher quality means much higher value over the long run, right? Much better quality asset, less work, less having to tear it down and rebuild it, all the, less headaches, less everything. So, cap rate is a measure of basically where are you in that time versus money thing, right? And so when you got a lot of time and you're willing to deal with a lot of shit, you should be doing big cap deals, right? And as you want higher and higher quality, cap rate's going to come down.
That's so unique that you say that, man, because I remember, again, younger, I was buying these rental properties that had stupid cap rates, like just like it doesn't even make logical sense.
Could pay them off in a couple of years from the rent.
And it's like, what is this, man? And it was, for me, I was so happy getting these like just stupid cap rates. And I had a buddy of mine, a little bit older than me, buying very, very close to where I was buying, but normal cap rates. Let's just say
higher quality,
5, 6 cap rates at that time, but way higher quality. And it was looking at the difference of those two right there. And he still has his. He's lived his day, still has his, and I got rid of all of mine. But it was, again, it's like time and money, and where you're at, what you're doing, and so forth, because they mean two different things to two different people as you play the game. I got one more question for you before the money is, which is, I just want to get your insight on this little GameStop thing going on. I think it's so freaking unique. Watching almost like the little man go after the big man. It's kind of how I perceive it right now.
Totally. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's taking it to the man. I mean, that's for sure unique. What it is, right? I think it's a combination of taking it to the man and Las Vegas being closed.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, the Barstool Sports guy.
I watched his stuff on TikTok yesterday, and I think he put, on TikTok, I think he said he put $1 million in. $1 million, and he's like, I think I'm gonna put more into it. And the Barstool's guy, I think his name is Dave, I can't remember, but it's Barstool Sports, whatever. And he put some money in it, and maybe more money, and it's watching this Reddit, site blow up GameStop. What was it? They went from like $6 to $347.
It's crazy.
This is nuts. Nuts.
And it has nothing to do with the value of the thing, right? It is the definition of a bubble, right? It's like the tulips back in the Dutch, right? Like this is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's a belief. It's just it's what do you want this to be, and that power of crowds, right? Like this influencer marketing and all this stuff is now. I mean, that's the Barstool Sports thing, right?
Sure.
By getting out there and talking about it and saying that, hey, I think this is up, and I'm going to put some money into it. He willed it up. It didn't have anything to do with fundamentals or anything else.
He helped push it up, and it's funny because he helped push it on TikTok. Like, who'd have thought TikTok? This guy's talking about Reddit. Shorting stocks and freaking GameStop off of TikTok. It's just a unique, again, it goes to the influence and how it all plays out and works. And then Reddit's the one kind of behind the scenes pushing it, or not Reddit, but the site that they're on.
The bigger question is, what does it mean overall? Right?
Big term.
And
when you watch this, what does this actually mean long term for stocks? Because I think about the flip side of it. This is not the first time this has been done, maybe from little guy to big guy. And driving the stock up on a shorted stock. You think I always watch. I can't think of the guy's name now, but you probably know who I'm talking about. They refer to him as Baby Buffett. I can't think. He's a huge short guy in this stock. He's on every freaking news. He owns a massive fund. And he's always on news, and he's a shorter, and he's taking a ton of flack because so many people follow him for stock advice, and he'll go on these national news sites and basically bash a stock, a company, destroy this company verbally of why they're not worth investing in and why it's bad. Meanwhile, before, he literally played it out and bought in like billions on shorting it, and then goes on this like news cycle process over it, all these in his books, and when he's so powerful that when he calls in his staff and says, hey, he wants to come on the show, they'll say yes. They literally call him the baby Buffett, right? It's like Warren Buffett calling you to be on your show. The answer is yes, and destroys these stocks. They plummet, right? And then he makes like billions off of it. There's all kinds of documentaries on this guy that you can go watch and so forth. One of the big ones that he did was Herbalife, if you remember that one.
Yeah.
He did Herbalife. And
I know who you're talking about.
It comes to me in a second. But he did Herbalife, and there was a whole documentary on Netflix how he did it and how they show him behind the scenes and so forth. It's really crazy. So my point to you is, this is not the first time this concept has been done. It was just the other way around.
The other side.
It was the other way, shorting the stock and then pushing the short out
Right.
destroy a company, if you will.
Yeah.
And
Melvin
then
Capital's in trouble.
they made a ton of money off of it. And this is like the first time, maybe the first time we were talking about it, where the little guy's like, oh no, you're shorting this, we're gonna blow this thing up and make you lose all your money. And companies have lost, these funds have lost like billions on this shorting this thing.
Yeah, I think the stock market's fascinating, and it's a fascinating measure, kind of sentiment and stuff, and I like to watch it for those reasons. It doesn't have anything to do with fundamentals anymore,
No.
in my opinion. So, and I'm a fundamentals logic guy, and so I find all this stuff fascinating, but like I'm out.
Yeah,
like,
I'm out. I'm done.
I'm a real estate guy. I'm going to stay there.
That's good. It is. I do think the probably biggest takeaway that you said right there was, what does this do long term? What does this do long term that with influence, social media, small guys getting together and then pushing it? Like, what does this actually do? And how much does it change the data? And is it real cash flow in a company, or now it's not even based off of what is the real cash flow? It's based off of, are all these other guys going to invest and push it out? I mean, it really is a game changer if you stop and think about it, what could happen here. All right, Sean O'Toole. That's your sign, man. Money is.
Love
it. Very excited to see what your answer here is with Property Radar. And money is, what I want you to do is I'm going to give you the Sharpie.
Okay.
Don't tell me the answer yet. I want you to fill this out right here, whatever the answer is, and then sign it big right here. Again, don't tell me the answer. We'll reveal it together, and then I will ask you some questions about why you went with that answer there. There you go.
Okay.
Got it?
Got it.
All right, man. You're a unique one because you even hid the sign for me. Sometimes they will, when they do it, I can read it upside down. And I'm like, I can see what you're putting it there. All right, let me see the sign now. Answer is, dude, this is a good one. Money is, his answer is, money is a belief system by Sean O'Toole. I'm going to refer to you as the economist. I'm going to start calling you for all my advice that I need here. All right, let's break it down. When you say money is a belief system, what does that mean?
I mean, first of all, it's a fiat currency, right?
Yeah,
so the only reason it has value is because we believe it has value, right? And so, and since we measure most things in money, like just coming back to GameStop, right?
Yeah.
So some people believe it's worth 300, some people believe it's worth 20, right? Which belief system is winning out there right now? And belief systems change over time, and I think that's the other important thing that, people that are investing in real estate, right? Like, so if a 10 cap was a good deal when interest rates were 7%, is a 10 cap still the right measure when interest rates are 2.5%? Right? Like, and why do we believe that a 10 cap is a good return on investment? What is a good return on investment? And all of that comes down to just what we believe, what we were taught, what we, think.
Yeah.
And, I think money's super fascinating in that standpoint. Is you think of it as a measure, right? But I think of it as a measure of beliefs because money itself is a belief system. Yeah,
it is 100% a belief system because it, as you know, is backed by nothing at this point.
Yeah.
It's literally a piece of paper. But perhaps what is more valuable than the paper or the gold that it used to be backed by is the belief system. Yeah. I mean, you think about it, that is what's backing the dollars. Is we have a belief that this dollar, if this was a dollar, because it says a $50 on it, we have a belief that it really means $50, and I can take it to go buy this and use that as $50 to payment. And not only do I believe this person has to believe it, and we have to agree without even discussing it that this is the value of it. And that belief system, to me, if you stop and think about it, is more valuable than gold. I mean, it is more valuable. They've turned it into a ability to make it as big as you want to freaking make it until finally people say, wait a second, this doesn't make any logical sense. But dude, money is a straight up belief system.
And and in the U.S., like we benefit that in ways that people just being the world's reserve currency. Like after World War II, a lot of people said, you know what, we're gonna just erase these debts, right? We're not gonna repay them. We repaid them. Right. And that created a belief system around the world that the U.S. is a safe place to put your money. Right. That's why our interest rates are so low. That's why our house prices are so high, right? So it's just such an important, piece of the whole puzzle. Yeah. And when you think of it that way, right? if I'm going to give you my money, it's because I believe that's going to give me something of value in return, right? If I'm going to spend money on a vacation, it's because I believe that experience is going to, be more valuable to me than the money. It is all at the end of the day kind of in our heads. And if you start thinking about that and influencers and where things are swinging.
Wow.
Right?
What a great point with the GameStop and everything, yeah.
With GameStop and everything else, right?
That,
you got to think about how are belief systems changing, and then you'll see, GameStop's obvious, right? Of course that was going to happen, right?
Kind of like I know we're out of time, but it's kind of like the crypto side. There's a lot of belief system in the crypto.
It's all belief system. I mean, it's not great technology. I'm a technologist. Like, I don't think it's great technology. Like all this power going to like mind, but the whole thing's kind of from a technology side is stupid. But it's really tapping into this kind of anti-government, anti-currency.
Correct.
I want to have something that's separate and safe, right? And that it is all belief system.
It is a belief system, man. Total belief system when I look at crypto. And I heard this statement a while back that I thought was so unique. It said, and you're kind of seeing it again on GameStop right now when it comes to money, it said gold was God's money that he created. The dollar, paper was, the fiat was the government's money. And Bitcoin is man's money. The people's money, if you will, that created it.
It's a great pitch if you got in early and want to see it go up.
Yeah, keep pushing that one, man. So awesome, man. Sean, I love having the show, man. Such a cool guy. I love your software. I'm gonna go get a deeper demo here with you with one of our guys as well. And again, this Property Radar is where they can find some real serious data for real estate investors, agents, but really anybody in business looking for data.
Yeah, I got solar companies and roofers and folks like that.
That are using the data for what they're looking for.
Go close deals.
And absolutely freaking love it, man. And so happy having the show. Hopefully we can do some more stuff with you, including some mountain biking.
I'm excited about that.
Got some of that coming
I live
up, perhaps.
for that.
Yeah, you almost daily, you said.
Almost daily, yeah.
On the mountain bike. I'm not daily yet. I'm doing a summer, maybe a 2 to 3 times a weeker.
Yeah.
And maybe a 4 time if I'm really pushing it. But maybe I can get to a daily one. Yeah. And I'll look as good as you, brother.
I'll work out, I'll work till 7, but it stays light till 9. So I can go get a nice, good hour, 2 hour ride in after work.
A light riding on them? Put the lights on them?
I do.
I love that right there.
Yeah.
I love night riding.
It's, to be out in the middle of a forest.
Oh, man.
Like in the middle of the night, like go do like an 11, 12 o'clock.
Oh, man.
Right? It's
Pitch
kind of
black.
a special, and then like turn off the lights and just sit there. It's a religious experience.
I love the night riding. So fun. And snow riding.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's awesome, man. So hopefully we get some bike riding in Lake Tahoe with you.
Awesome.
I have not ridden out there, so happy to do it, man.
Come out anytime.
Thank you. Sean, thanks for being on the show. Again, guys, thank you for watching The Money Is Show with Sean O'Toole at PropertyRadar.com. We will see you guys next week on The Money Is Show.